let's talk about niggas in Paris.
I had a bunch of other instruments that I added from my Phantom. I think I had an F6. I added a bunch of like horns and the bass lines and synths, and Kanye stripped all that away and just kept the loop and the drums. And then he was like, that's the beat right there. I feel like the quicker I do beats and the more simplified they are, the more placements I get.
Now with that said, arrangement can have so many different approaches and many different perspectives on it, but you just really want to get a vibe going. Now you want to stay tuned into the end, because at the end I'm gonna be showing you how to convert your whole track into one sequence so that you can later on extract it for MP3 or WAV. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. For those that are new, let's just start off very basic. Sequence is just going to be your different pattern blocks for your music. So if you're familiar with songwriting, or even if you're new, you have your intro, you have your chorus, you have your verse, and then you probably have a pre-chorus, which is optional, and you will probably have a bridge. That's how you would set it up in your sequence. So if you have all your patterns on just one sequence, that's fine. But I do recommend that when you do different parts, let's say if you have a different drum part or a different melody part, just put it on a different sequence, because it's going to make it a lot easier later on to line it up when you go into song mode. So if you press menu and then you go to song, you can see that once you build out your sequence, then you could arrange it right here, and then that's how you would get your song, and that's how we're going to do it today. This beat is actually from my previous video, and it sounds like this. So it's kind of like that loop, and as you can see, I named it the hook, because out of all the chops that I had, this just sound like it could just be the chorus, because it has more of the vocal instrumentation. And another thing is that I went through the chops. As in my other video, I did about like maybe 4 to 5 different chops, but then I only broke it down to like 3. And for the drums, I actually went back and got the stems for the drums as well, and I only used a kick and a snare. Then I went and got an intro chop. I didn't want that to just be the intro, because then that's already the same as the hook. So you kind of want to differentiate the hook from the intro. You want something that goes into it, not just, you know, playing it the same thing. Sometimes it could work, but for this, I didn't want to do that.
The Lord is my shepherd.
I could have picked the talking part, but the thing about the talking part, they talking about the Lord is my shepherd, and the way I had a hook planned is just want to go right with it. And yes, I could have just took the intro from right here. But, you know, like I said, I just kind of to want to have my own spin on it. So I didn't want this to be the intro if it's already the intro in the song. So I went ahead and grabbed like this section where it's like, and you see, that's where my chop came in. So you just really want to go through your whole sample and listen to certain parts that sound like it's about to lead into something, not something that sounds like it's about to just fade out and then the beat is done. So it's more so about unique and expression. Now with the outro, I did keep how the outro is in this one, only because I liked it, and I couldn't really find another part that kind of tapers off and sounds like it's ending. So I went all the way to the end, and I heard something like this. Yeah, so that just sounds very pleasant to hear. That actually sounds like the song is finishing. So as you can see, I'm still on the first sequence, and if you go to the grid view, I didn't play anything on the outro or the intro, just have my drums and I just have my hook. All right, so we established our hook. So what we can do now is just rename it by going to this A tool right here, and I'll just call this the hook. Now, the way you will go about arranging it is to copy the sequence over, because if I just go to the next sequence, you can see that the tempo goes back to 140 and it's set back to 4 bars. It's not going to be set as, you know, your project. So go to this pencil tool, go to copy sequence, and now we're going to work on the verse real quick. And then we're just going to name that the verse. Make sure that you name it, because it's just going to name it the same one as the first sequence that you're copying over. You don't want to do that, because then it gets confusing. So all I have to do is just go in and just erase and then press do it. And then I can just start over with these drums. And since we're doing like a verse, I could be very subtle of how I switch up the drums. I do like this double hit that I could just leave one out. So it sound like. Arrangement should be very subtle. It shouldn't be anything too crazy. So now we got the drums and we got our new sample chop. Then we just do the same thing over, copy the sequence. And I usually like to just do verse part 2. I don't mean the second verse, but I just mean like a part 2 to the verse. So the way I like to arrange my beats, let's say I'm doing like a 12 bar, or even if you're doing 16 bars, every 4 bar you kind of want to switch up. And if it's not every 4 bar, definitely every 8 bar. This could be the second half. You know, if I'm doing a 16 bar loop, then I'll just break it down to 2 different parts. But you just really got to listen to your song. But if you keep that kind of idea in your head, then you'll know like, okay, I'm gonna loop this part for 8 bars. So now we just go back into that first chop and we just erase that again. And I'll probably just keep the drums the same, because you could always switch up the drums just by adding mutes. Mutes is very powerful. So let's just add in our second chop. See, I'm waiting until like the 8 bar to resolve the pattern so it can loop around, rather than just keeping it too repetitive. You don't want it to be too repetitive, especially towards the end of the 4th bar or towards the end of the 8 bar. Just keep that in mind. And then I don't have to copy over the sequence for this one, because I don't want the drums, nor do I want any of the sample chops from the hook program. All I'm going to do is just change the tempo, bring it back down to 88. Now, this is where a lot of people mess up. You can see that track 1 goes with the hook, track 2 goes with the drums, like if we're talking about the other sequence, how it's lining up. Now, you kind of want to keep this same kind of lineup, because once you get to converting it into a whole song, then things get a bit weird. Like your chops is going to probably be overwritten or overlapping each other. So how I have it on track 3 is the intro, is how I'm going to have it for the intro sequence. Start right there. And then I'm just going to just put that in there. And we're just going to name that the intro. And then we're going to scroll again to the outro, name this the outro. And then we're just going to go to the 4th track, because that's usually where our outro is if we went back to the other sequence. Trust me on this one. So now we have all our sequence, all of our pattern blocks for our song. We have our hook, we have our verse, we have a different part of our verse, then an intro and an outro. Now, like I said before, you can have pre-chorus and a bridge, just depending on what you want to do. Remember, what you want to do. If you want a rundown of practical bars within certain pattern blocks, a hook for sure should always be 8 bars. A verse can be anywhere from 8 to 16 bars. Now, you don't ever want to do odd numbers, and you don't want to do like 6 bars either, because 6 bars is going to feel a bit weird. For the outro, it could be as however long you want it, because this is the outro. You could get all crazy and experimental and, you know, do whatever you want towards the outro, but just keep in mind, make it make sense, make it actually fit the context of your music. If you having a long cinematic outro when it was a club song, then that's probably not the best kind of feel for it. So if we're on a main screen, hit menu, go to song, and then the way you would just put it in there is just, you know, press overdub. We're going to start with our intro. Then we're going to go into our hook. Then we're going to go to our verse part 2. Then we're going to go back into the hook again. And then we could just do our verse and then our verse part 2, then a hook, and then an outro. Now let's hear it back and let's see what we have right now. So this is why I like to arrange it in song modes, because then you will start to see the faults when you're trying to turn your beat into a full beat. You can see that there was that pause right before it got into the hook. So that should indicate to you that we probably got to bring up the tempo, maybe a little bit up, maybe just going up 1. So we're just going to switch all of this from 88 to 89. So now if we go back, let's just hear it. So that sounds a lot better. But for the intro, what I want to do is I'm going to actually go to my drums, which is on the second track. Remember, keep the same tracks and programs running so you don't confuse yourself. I'm going to go in. You already know, got to add the tag. And then I also want to go in and add like, of air candy. Now, if you don't know what air candy is, it's just like that swish or riser or effect to help go into the beat. So I'm just gonna use that. Now for the crash, let's just hide that. I could go to warp samples and just reverse it. There we go. But the reason why it took so long is because I have it all the way down here. If I bring it a bit closer, then you'll hear it a lot faster. So that's good. So now what we can do is record those in. So that crash came in a bit fast, so probably want to just nudge it over. So that's good. What I can do is press play, and then I could go all the way to hook, and look what it does. It says next, it's gonna play this. So you can see that swish, it kind of tapered off too quickly. So then I could just go back to warp samples and just bring back the sample a bit. Let's just bring it in to like right here. And then that's good. That way you don't have to keep going to song mode and playing it from here. But it does make it easy too to play from here too, because I could click on one and then just press play and it will play from this section. So we already know the intro goes well with the hook. Now we got to see if the hook goes well with the verse. For the verse, I have an idea right now that I want to add in another chop. So I'm gonna go to 6 sequence and just put in an extra chop. That's what I'm gonna name it. Keeping that in mind, make sure I drop my bars down to like 89 and maybe make this an 8-bar loop. I want to take that intro. Yeah, so that's cool. And like I said, let's go back to main real quick. Let's go to a new program, and then we're gonna name this extra chop. This is really the main way I like to chop. Go to assign. Now you see the extra chop program chopped up. You can't just make your own program from here. So you gotta do it from the main screen. And then I could just add it to pad 1, do it. Or matter of fact, what you should also get into the habit of is processing and extracting it, so that if anything get overlapped, you could always still have your chop to go back to. So then I have the extra chop. And then now I could just overdub and record it. So that's a 4-bar loop. If I kind of breeze past that part, if you just go in and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, then you'll know where it's looping. I actually have more videos on sampling. Just if you need any more techniques that you see me kind of glossing over the video, I want you guys to know I do have an ebook out of all the YouTube shorts combined. At least volume 1 will have the link. It will also show you in wording how to like do these quick tricks, and it's very useful. And the special edition comes with a free 30-minute call with me. So I just want to put that out there for those that don't know and just want extra help, or just want to have a tool where they could just go to and just be like, oh, okay, I didn't remember how to do that, and I couldn't really find it in the YouTube shorts. Everything is organized for you. Now, getting back to the video, what I wanna do now is show you how you can export it into a song. You wanna just go to menu, go to song, and then you're gonna see convert sequence. This is when you have your whole song the way that you want it. Now, since I did add it in that extra chop, I wanna see how it would sound replacing the verse. I could also do the same right here, switch this to an extra chop, and then just keep the verse part 2. Now, that way I have 3 different switch ups because I have the extra chops and the verse part 2. Then you just want to press convert. Then it's going to go to the next available track. So just press that, go back to main, and now on track 9, you can see the full song. Now, the full song is still attached to your program. That's why I said to make sure your programs and your tracks are named properly and lined up correctly, because now all the chops that I use from the hook program is gonna be shown. And then all my drums will be shown on the drum track. So I could even go back through and name it again. You wanna make sure everything is just organized so that you're not missing out on any of your sounds. So with this now, once you have your whole beat on one sequence and you wanna just turn it into an MP3 or a WAV file, you could just go to save. But before I go to save, I just want to show you, if you wanted to track out your drums or just track out any of your samples, you can easily do that just by going to the track that you want to do that to, do the pencil tool, and then press explode. I don't want to do that because it's only the kick and the snare, but that's how you would do it. And then it would go on each individual track, and then you could just go to save, and then you could just go to audio mix down. And from here, you could do separate the programs. You could track it out by programs. If you have exploded tracks like the way I just showed you, then it's just a track out for everything. And then you always want the tail to be 0 so that it doesn't have that tail length. And I know a lot of people is gonna argue and tell you, no, because you want that little outro tail. You could do that in post. And the only reason why I'm saying that is so that if they drop it into the file, it's easy for them to just snap it to the grid. Because any little timing could just throw it off, and you don't know who the engineer is. You just always want to make it easy on any engineer that your beat reaches to. And then you could just export it, and you could save it on your external hard drive just by doing that and creating a folder. I'm not going to do all of that, but what I am going to do is just show you how you can get creative while everything is in one sequence now. You can start to use your mutes, and you can start to add in some other elements.